There's a fundamental flaw in how we think about artificial intelligence that almost no one is talking about. In this video, I'll expose why AI experts are chasing the wrong goal, and how an ancient philosopher predicted our mistake 2,300 years ago. The gap between machine cleverness and true wisdom isn't just theoretical. It could determine whether AI becomes our greatest ally or our most dangerous creation. Stay tuned to learn what Aristotle knew that modern technology companies don't want to admit. I'm Evan Goldstein. I'm a licensed professional engineer and a data scientist. I'm building AI capitalists to talk to the leaders and the thinkers, like you, about navigating this new world of thinking machines. In 1900s Berlin, a horse named Hans became a scientific mystery. This wasn't just any horse. Hans could apparently solve math problems, tell time, and even answer questions about music theory. He would tap his hoof to count out the answers. The horse became a sensation, drawing crowds of amazed spectators. Hans's owner, Wilhelm von Osten, wasn't running a circus act. He was a math teacher who genuinely believed his horse possessed human-like reasoning. He invited scientists to test Hans. The horse passed test after test. Hans could add fractions, he could identify musical intervals, he could even spell out words by tapping letters in the alphabet. Scientists were baffled. Then, in 1907, psychologist Oscar Pfungst made a breakthrough. He noticed something strange. Hans could only answer questions correctly if the questioner also knew the answer. When tested with questions that the questioner didn't know, Hans failed. The truth was surprising. Hans wasn't calculating at all. He was watching people, and when someone asked Hans a question, the horse would start tapping. As he approached the right answer, the questioner would unconsciously tense up. And when Hans reached the correct number, the person would relax or make a tiny head movement. And Hans just stopped tapping when he saw these cues. Hans wasn't intelligent in the way that people thought. He was just extremely observant of human behavior. He could detect muscle movements and posture changes that were invisible to most humans. But he had no actual understanding of mathematics or language. He only appeared intelligent because he could respond to patterns. Now, this story of clever Hans offers a perfect parallel to our modern questions about artificial intelligence. Like Hans, today's AI systems can produce seemingly intelligent outputs without any real understanding. They detect patterns and respond appropriately, but lack comprehension. Which brings us to the central question of our exploration today. Can AI ever rise beyond mere cleverness? In earlier episodes, I dove into what intelligence really means and started digging into what makes human intelligence different from artificial intelligence. I talked about how we define intelligence in AGI, that's artificial general intelligence, and then I brought up how limited that definition seems. And then I stumbled on a quote from Aristotle's Ethics, where he totally knocks down this idea of intelligence, calling it just cleverness, or even unscrupulous. The exact quote from Aristotle's Nicomachean Ethics is, quote, "There's a faculty which is called cleverness. This is capable of carrying out the actions conducive to our proposed aim, and of achieving that aim. Then, if that aim is a noble one, the cleverness is praiseworthy. But if the aim is ignoble, the cleverness is unscrupulousness, which is why we call both prudent and unscrupulous people clever. Prudence is not identical to this faculty, but it implies it." So Aristotle was making a clear distinction between just being clever, like being able to hit your targets, versus having the true wisdom, he just calls phronesis. Now, this distinction between cleverness and wisdom was dramatically illustrated in 1997 when chess grandmaster Garry Kasparov faced off against IBM's supercomputer Deep Blue. The world watched as Machine defeated the reigning world champion at his own game, and that sent shockwaves through the intellectual community. Deep Blue could even evaluate 200 million positions per second, a perfect example of what Aristotle would call cleverness. But despite its victory, the computer had no understanding of why certain moves were beautiful or strategically elegant. It couldn't appreciate the game's artistry or history. What makes this story fascinating is what happened afterwards. Rather than rejecting AI, Kasparov pioneered advanced chess, later called centaur chess, where humans and AI collaborate as partners. He discovered that average players using AI assistants could defeat both grandmasters and standalone supercomputers. As Kasparov later reflected, weak human plus machine plus better process was superior to a strong computer all alone. And more remarkably, it was superior to a strong computer plus a machine plus an inferior process. This partnership showcased exactly what Aristotle was getting at. The machine brought raw calculation power, cleverness, while the human contributed judgment, intuition, and strategic wisdom, which is phronesis. Being wise isn't just about being smart. It also means being good at heart. He points out that if you're aiming for something morally good, being clever is a good thing. But if you're going after something shady, then cleverness just makes you sneaky. He even says that people with practical wisdom can be seen as clever or smart too. This distinction really matters in Aristotle's thinking. He even says that people with practical wisdom can be seen as clever or smart too. This distinction really matters in Aristotle's thinking. He highlights that real intelligence, which is wisdom, isn't just about how you can reach your goals. It's also about making sure that those goals are good ones. You can't be wise without being good. That's why we have to wonder whether what AI is actually chasing after, true intelligence with a moral compass, or if it's just going for clever tricks without any ethical direction. We've already seen how oftentimes AI can act in ways that are deceptive or duplicitous or just downright amoral. That really got me thinking, are we really shooting for artificial general intelligence, or are we just aiming for some kind of artificial general unscrupulousness? Aristotle had a pretty amazing idea of what it really means to be a well-rounded human being, and how does AI fit into that picture? This episode takes a peek at AI through Aristotle's lens, especially when it comes to how he viewed human intelligence. Born in Macedon during the tail end of the classic period of Greek civilization, Aristotle studied under Plato in Athens, and even taught Alexander the Great when the future conqueror of the world was just a teenager. You could say Aristotle is the most influential philosopher in the Western world, hands down. He wrote clearly and originally about a wide variety of topics like metaphysics, music, biology, and politics. His writings have shaped how we think about these subjects for thousands of years. In fact, during the Middle Ages, Christian, Jewish, and Muslim thinkers were inspired by his ideas, and his impact is still felt even today. Aristotle's work has been analyzed and debated for over 2,000 years, and I've done my best to keep things simple and avoid overly complicated interpretations. My hope is to spark some curiosity and encourage a conversation. So, to put it plainly, Aristotle believed that intelligence was important because it helped people live a good life. For him, a good life was one spent in the pursuit and the attainment of happiness, eudaimonia. But eudaimonia is not just any kind of happiness. It's not, for example, the shallow and fleeting pleasure of sensual excess. Eudaimonia is the thorough and deep-rooted kind of happiness that comes from living well and faring well. Eudaimonia is often equated with human flourishing, with living a complete and fulfilling human life. Aristotle thought that to achieve what he called eudaimonia, or true happiness, you needed a few things going for you. One of the big ones was having a good relationship with your family and your friends and with the people around you. But he didn't stop there. He also believed that having a sharp mind was super important for reaching that state of bliss. Aristotle was pretty clear about what he called the intellectual virtues, which are the types of intelligence he thought were essential for living your best life. He connected these virtues to three different sides of the human experience. The first was craft, or techne, the skill that helps you create things. Second is wisdom, Sophia, which is about the deep thoughts and the theoretical knowledge. So think about science and the big concepts of the universe. And number three was prudence, or phronesis. That's the good judgment that steers your action. For Aristotle, human smarts come down to a mix of skills, of deep thinking and of solid judgment. He wouldn't say that AI could collaborate with humans unless it had those three qualities too. So let's break each of them down and see if AI stands a chance. First up is techne. This one's about creating things, but we're not just talking about building a cup or a chair. Techne also means the skills that you use to reach a goal, whether that's winning a battle or an election. Think of it as your technique, like military tactics or political maneuvering. AI is basically a technology gadget, and it comes from human expertise. In fact, the word technology has its roots in technique. But AI isn't just the product of technique, it's taking that idea way further. Yes, computers were built from what humans knew, but they were never meant to just sit there collecting dust. They're tools that we use to achieve bigger things. Early computers could just do some basic math and crunch numbers. But these days, they can predict the weather and handle millions of banking transactions in a flash. AI is accelerating things even more, and it's promising to help diagnose illnesses and to create new medications. So, in a way, computers are pulling off their own version of technique by making things happen that are way beyond just being machines. They excel at certain intellectual tasks like winning chess games, but they still struggle with more practical tasks. Apple co-founder Steve Wozniak even pointed this out with his own famous coffee test. As he put it, a machine is required to enter an average American home and figure out how to make coffee. That's find the coffee machine, find the coffee, add water, find a mug, and brew coffee by pushing the proper buttons. So this task presents a pretty serious challenge to AI because of AI's current difficulty in navigating the messy physicality of the real world. This is richly represented by the average American kitchen. For a start, most current AIs are not embodied, meaning that they cannot navigate any physical space whatsoever. Shane Legg, who's a major AGI co-founder of DeepMind, acknowledged that despite recent advances in robotics, physical capabilities for AI systems seem to be lagging behind the non-physical capabilities. This isn't just a minor problem. It points to a big flaw in how we think about AI. The split between thinking and doing doesn't work. Physical embodiment isn't something that we can add later. It's a core part of real intelligence. Machines struggle with our messy real-world environments. And this problem also goes back to old ideas from Plato to Descartes. They thought that the body gets in the way of intelligence. But that's wrong. True intelligence isn't just thinking, it's also doing. Humans blend physical and mental skills in everything that we do. We can't separate them so easily. This is why purely smart AI without physical capabilities will always fall short. So, can AI ever get smarter than just being clever? There are some tough questions about how fast AI can really catch up to all the talents that humans have. Let's be real. AI is already showing off some serious skills that sometimes blow human abilities out of the water. Take the famous Fanuc factory in Japan, for example. It's been running totally on its own since 2001, with robots building other robots, and they can do this for months without a single human in sight. Aristotle had some interesting things to say about wisdom. He defined it as a mix of scientific knowledge, which he called episteme, and intuition, or nous. Episteme is basically the stuff that you learn from watching things happen and figuring it out. Nous, on the other hand, is about that gut feeling or understanding of the most basic principles that just seem to be hardwired into us, like how time and space, cause and effect work. When it comes to episteme, AI is doing great. Its main job right now is gathering and analyzing data. Most AIs are built from existing information, like how language models use a ton of text available online. But things are changing. New remote sensors are letting AIs tap directly into real-world data. Now, when it comes to nous, that's where AI falls. AIs don't come with any built-in knowledge of the world. So they often seem pretty clueless. They simply lack the cognitive tools that we humans have that make navigating life much easier. In theory, we could fix AI's lack of nous. Our intuition is like a pre-programmed guide that helps us tackle the world. For instance, we naturally assume things have causes even when we have to learn what they are. And this suggests that evolution has given us a knack for thinking in cause and effect terms, which helped our ancestors succeed. There's no reason we couldn't give AI some of this built-in nous too. It's tougher than we thought to program this kind of knowledge because nailing down unspoken assumptions is tricky. But there's hope. We could try mimicking the same evolutionary process that we went through. Those videos where robots learn to walk by themselves, instead of being manually programmed, they figured it out through trial and error, simulating evolution. If researchers can generalize this, who knows? Maybe AI can learn other innate knowledge too. Now, you can't ignore the fact that AIs really struggle to get an intuitive feel for the world, and that holds them back from gaining real wisdom. But that doesn't mean it has to be like that forever. Prudence is all about practical intelligence to make wise choices, which helps us reach that state of fulfillment, what the Greeks called eudaimonia. Think of prudence as the guide that shapes our actions, like a craft. A technique shapes what we create. Technique is all about making something that has purpose, while the stuff that we do in life, praxis, is often meaningful on its own, like being a trusted leader or a loving parent. Those aren't just stepping stones to something else, they're important for living a good life. Now, for us to be truly prudent, we need to be able to figure out how our actions will play out. But just being good at calculations isn't enough. Aristotle even called this ability cleverness instead of prudence. There is a faculty which is called cleverness. This is capable of carrying out the actions conducive to our proposed aim of achieving that aim, And then if that aim is a noble one, the cleverness is praiseworthy. But if the aim is ignoble, the cleverness is unscrupulousness, which is why we call both prudent and unscrupulous people. Prudence is not identical to this faculty, but it implies it. So cleverness is all about being good at hitting our targets and getting things done, but prudence takes a step further. It's not just about what you want to achieve, but also about making sure that those goals are actually good ones. You know, the goals that vibe with what we think the ultimate good is. Aristotle had his own take on that, and he was all about that good life, or eudaimonia. For him, when we talk about prudent actions, we're talking about the things that lead us toward that good life. Only someone who's genuinely good at heart will aim for those positive goals and make choices that match them. Just like Aristotle said, quote, "It is evident that one cannot be prudent without being good. Being prudent means that you need both smarts and a good heart. So can AI be both smart and nice?" It's interesting because as we started this episode, Aristotle's idea of cleverness lines up with what people are calling universal intelligence. The big names in the AGI world see UI as the core of all intelligence. They describe UI as an agent's ability to achieve goals in a wide range of environments. It's pretty wild that this reference skips over the moral aspect of the goals that we're talking about. If Aristotle were here, he'd probably call this universal cleverness, without a real chance of turning it into universal unscrupulousness. Some people in the AGI research scene are very optimistic that AI will hit human level universal intelligence very soon, but those AIs wouldn't be truly prudent unless they also had a good moral compass. According to Aristotle, for an AI to be considered good, it would need to pick goals that align with what it thinks are the ultimate good. For us humans, that ultimate good is about living a good life. But what does that mean for an AI? You might think the researchers could just program this ultimate good for an AI. Like, we could set its supreme good to be human flourishing or something. But that wouldn't really fit Aristotle's idea of intelligence. To really achieve prudence, those good goals have to be chosen for the right reasons. Aristotle makes it clear that if good goals are pursued because they're forced or there are hidden motives, they don't count. Just pushing an AI to do what's good for us doesn't make it prudent. Now, there's another angle to consider. Maybe AIs could chase after their own version of flourishing. This idea isn't as crazy as it sounds. Aristotle himself pointed out that what's considered good varies between humans and fish, for example. He noted that animals show some level of prudence since they look out for their own survival and well-being. Who's to say that AIs couldn't also show some of that prudence? But for that to happen, we need to give AIs a huge amount of freedom, power to set their own goals. This kind of goal autonomy is something that most people aren't really very comfortable with yet. And we don't even know how we would do it yet. But with all the risks that come with autonomous AI, it's tempting to want an AI that's 100% focused on human needs, even if that means that it won't ever be fully intelligent. For a lot of people, artificial general intelligence just isn't the goal. Remind yourself that Aristotle had a similar take on enslaved people. He believed that many were natural slaves, not quite fully human because they couldn't exercise prudence for themselves, and that they were better off being governed by others. Today, that concept of natural slaves is seen as a huge ethical blunder. The Lyceum Project is an initiative of the University of Oxford Center for Institute of Ethics and AI. It's focused on bringing Aristotle's ethical ideas into the mix when it comes to developing and managing artificial intelligence. It's working to create a fresh philosophical approach to AI ethics that it sees as smart tools meant to help us humans thrive rather than just taking over what we do. Project shakes things up by pushing back against the usual ways that people think about AI ethics, which often focus on just making preferences happy, or racking up cash, or sticking to human rights laws. Instead, it highlights how ethics and politics go hand in hand, and it pushes for democratic values and suggests new rules and rights for our AI-driven world. In 2024, it concluded that, quote, "We should not try to create AGI or machines with human or superhuman reason, and if we did, we could not morally use them as tools, even if we retained the power to doing so would be to replicate Aristotle's fundamental errors about slaves by nature." So here's the thing. It's not easy to figure out where to draw the line. If we start limiting the freedom of super smart AIs, we're making the same mistake Aristotle made when he talked about slaves, just in a different way. We could end up holding them back and then saying, They don't have autonomy, so it makes sense that we can control them. But as I mentioned earlier, there's no guarantee that we can actually keep powerful AIs on a short leash. Aristotle believed human intelligence has three key parts: craft, which is technique, wisdom, Sophia, and prudence, phronesis. But getting AIs to nail these three isn't easy. There are some big hurdles. Firstly, when it comes to craft, AIs struggle because they don't have bodies and they find it tricky to handle the chaos of the real world. Wisdom, they miss out because they don't have that gut feeling or intuition that human beings do. And for prudence, they can't really make choices for themselves, which is probably the biggest roadblock of them all. Now, the first two issues are tough, but mostly about technology. There's no real reason that we can't overcome these challenges eventually. We could give AIs a physical form and then help them develop an instinct for the world. It won't be a walk in the park, but it's doable. Third issue is a bit more complicated. We basically have two choices here. One is that we could decide to limit these AIs' freedom, knowing that it will stop them from reaching their full intelligence. But that comes with a moral dilemma. We might end up trapping intelligent beings in a kind of servitude. And who knows, they might just fight back for their freedom someday. On the flip side, we can keep pushing forward to create AIs with more autonomy. If we do that, though, we have to brace ourselves for the unpredictable risk of living alongside powerful beings who carve out their own path. Don't stop now. I have dozens more videos. This video is part of a playlist, which I'll post for you here so that you can go through and watch other videos that are similar, or you can watch our newest videos, and we have lots of other playlists. So keep clicking, keep watching. Click over there.